What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the channel. Today, we're talking 2025 rookie big board. Now, this is something I did for 3 years. I started this 2 years ago on another site. I did it weekly, and then I did it over the offseason. I would do the top 36 Superflex assets out there that are draft eligible. And I dived into it. I did an article for our Substack. You can find it below in the description below if you want more details. I am going to go into some of these guys, but I actually did almost like a 2,000-word article for everybody out there. You can find it below. So let's go over the big board. What are we looking at here? Again, these are the top assets out there in Superflex. Now, what are our criteria? I always hear that. So one thing I always look for is from a fantasy perspective, who do I think is going to perform well? Then I'm also tying in my scouting and what I think draft capital is going to be, right? So it's kind of a hodgepodge of everything. There are some guys not on the board that you might like that I don't think are coming out, right? They're not coming out. A lot of the quarterbacks, for example. And then there's some guys in that second round that I think might go back to school. So let's look at the big board. Let's talk about it, kind of go over like what we're seeing out there right now. Now, the first tier that I have is Teteroa McMillan, Arizona wide receiver, and Ashton Jeanty. Those two guys to me are in the tier themselves. Now, if you want to put Jeanty at 1, I hear a lot of arguments about that. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's great. We're going to profile Jeanty, so I'm not going to go too much detail. Now, why do I lean wide receiver? Well, number one reason why I lean wide receiver is just because in Superflex and Dynasty, wide receivers hold more value, right? And we're talking like Bijan Robinson went 101 a couple years ago his rookie season, and I would argue that from a production standpoint, he hasn't panned out. Now, from a value standpoint, he's there, but maybe he's the outlier, right? So I tend to build around those wide receivers. Teteroa McMillan, to me, is a absolute stud. So for me, those two guys, if you want to, mix match them, that's fine there. Then it gets interesting because I think 3 through 12, you can mix and match these guys however you want, right? We have Luther Burden there, Amari Hampton, Travion Henderson, Shador, Quinshaw Judkins, Emeka Egbuka, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward, Coastal Levlin, and Tyler Warren. Now, the way I do my big board is 1.5 tight end premium. That's why I threw those tight ends down there at the bottom. And the thing between 3 and 12 is that there's going to be a lot of movement in those ranges. And what's going to happen is draft capital is going to affect the running backs. Draft capital is going to affect the quarterbacks, right? If Shador goes top 5, like many expect, and Cam Ward goes top 5, in Superflex, I could definitely see them getting pushed up to that 101, 102 mark, right? I could see that. That's totally fine there. I did get a little pushback when I put this out on social media this week about Travion Henderson. And we still believe in him. Yes, he's had a fantastic year. I think he's had 90-something attempts. He's at 700 yards, looks explosive again, splitting time with Judkins. And if you're looking at it from a standpoint of like, hey, who can be a 3-down back? Travion Henderson is that guy, right? And I still think he's talented. Hey, and I think he's going to crush the combine. Like, it would not shock me to see him go in the 4.3 range in his 40. And if he does that, he's going to get round 2 capital. And if he does that, he's going to be a top 5 pick in Superflex drafts. Now, there's a lot of movement here. I could be wrong. That's possibility. That's why this thing is not set in stone. The other one I wrote a full detail about was Travis Hunter in my article. But, what is he going to be? If I knew he was going to be strictly a wide receiver, he's a top 5 asset, right? I would argue that at 109, I can't let him dip any lower because if he goes to Jacksonville or one of these places, I do think he's going to have some special packages at the receiver position. And he's special enough to get the volume and targets down the stretch of a game that he could be an impact, right? I think he's a flex option in that role, and especially with his big play material. Now, the other thing you're going to see here is only got 2 quarterbacks there, and that's because I think a lot of QBs are going back. I think even Jalen Milroe might go back. I know a lot of people are mocking him in the first round. I don't have a first-round grade on Jalen Milroe. Some do, but I do think he might return back to school. He's had a couple really rough games. Drew Alder's probably going to go back. Jackson Dart, I don't know what he's going to look like moving forward. If he's going to, he's had some rough games. I know analytically, a lot of guys like him, but right now, the only 2 guys on here that I feel comfortable with is Shador and Cam Ward. But let me know in the comments. Drop it. What are some quarterbacks you think Milroe should be in the top 36? Or do you think he's going to go back like I do? Now, when you're looking at second round, some guys just to talk about quickly. I think Evan Stewart and Isaiah Bond go back to school. That's why they're in my second round. I still think they're talented. Production hasn't necessarily been there for Bond. Stewart's had some breakout games against some good opponents, most notably Ohio State, some of those games. I think he has tools and talent, but they're in that second round, just like Nicholas Singleton, because I don't know if they're coming back, right? I think Devin Neal has slept on out of Kansas. He came back. I wish he would have came out last year, but he's been good. I'm going to profile him, Dylan Sampson as well as we go through this. Tez Johnson, another guy to watch. Probably the biggest pushback I got from the running back spots was why Caleb Johnson is so low. Many think he should be in the first round. I think from a production standpoint, I agree. Like he's got that. But I also kind of take into account of Iowa's offense, that offensive line. We haven't really seen Iowa running backs perform in the NFL, and I don't want to helmet scout, but I do think from a fantasy perspective, I think we're putting first round hype on Caleb Johnson when it's not warranted yet. Cameron Lacey and Trey Harris. Trey Harris has obviously been crushing it. Been a little banged up the last few weeks. DJ Giddens is the guy at 25 that people need to know about. I think DJ Giddens is going to rise up boards. He's just one of those guys that is talented. Trevor Etienne and Jaden Ott, I think, are going to come back to school, but I still put him in the third round there. Another one to watch is Taj Brooks. Matthew Golden, the glue guy at Texas. And then finally, the two tight ends in that range. Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green has been putting up numbers. And in Mason Taylor at LSU, I think he's coming back. But damn it, he is good and he can play. And if he declares, I do think Mason Taylor is one of those glue guy third round that you're like, hey man, this guy's got 500 yards, 50 catches his rookie season. What is this kid? What can he move it forward? Like those are guys that I really like. But overall, this is the big board. Now, the ton of movement's going to happen, right? We're going to see that Woody Marks from USC, another guy. There's guys that are going to move it up and down this board, but I do feel comfortable in that first round. A lot of those guys are first-round talents. Those two tight ends at the end, Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren. I wrote about them if you want to dive into the tight end room because I know you guys are tight end magnets out there. You love the tight ends. Absolute really good studs. Like I could see Loveland and Warren being top 10 assets as soon as they're drafted, depending on where they go. So this class is fun. Now, I get these questions a lot. Like, how does this compare? How does it compare to 2024 or 2023, excuse me. How does it look there? I say the biggest difference is there's so many good quarterbacks in the last class. It pushed some more talent down. I do think it's top heavy right now. Now, if some quarterbacks go in the first round, you're going to see it down there. But if I'm looking for picks, and we're going to go over pick values later, we're going to look at what picks are being traded out there for single players so you can kind of gauge your dynasty value. I really want to go to stay in that top 106, 107 mark, right? I really want to get there. Now, some of that talent might get pushed down there, but I still believe in these guys. Another guy I didn't mention, we were going to talk about him on this channel forever. We've talked about him. Luther Burden, I still think, is a very solid wide receiver 2 option out there, or 3, that is going to find a home as a slot guy and just get targets, right? So that's why I have him in the top 3 there. Now, I do want to profile. So what we're going to go through here is we're going to profile some guys that I really like. I got to talk about Ashton Jeanty because I know not a lot of you watch college football. Just to show you what he's done through this last week. 275 attempts, 2,000 yards, and 27 touchdowns. The 25 means he's 25, class of 25. So that's what he's done this year. 27 touchdowns. He's probably going to win the Heisman. When you look at PFF grades, 96.9, 1,500 yards after contact. That's nasty. Like that is just straight dog status there. 5.48 yards contact per attempt. Missed tackles for us. He's already at 111. 48 10-plus explosive runs. His elusive ratings through the roof. He is one of the best graded PFF running backs in college football history. That's what he's been doing, and that's why many think he should be 101 or 102. I'm just such a proponent of wide receiver builds that I don't think Jeanty's that guy. Now, I will say if you draft Jeanty early, you're counting for this, and maybe you're a contender that got lucky with some picks that you traded, and now you're sitting there and you can plug them in. That's a great way to build your dynasty roster. That's why I'm looking at Jeanty being a stud. Now, the other guys I want to mention are just guys that are kind of getting slept on a little bit. Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. He's having a hell of a year, 25 class, 231 attempts, 1,300 yards, 22 touchdowns. His PFF run grade, 90.2, 821 yards after contact, 3.5 per attempt, 57 missed tackles for us, 33 10-plus runs, and in elusive ratings over 100. He's leading the SEC in rushing yards right now. As of this video getting recorded, he has been fantastic for Tennessee. If they beat Vanderbilt this week and are able to make a playoff, it's because of Dylan Sampson, right? And I know his numbers compared to Jeanty don't look great, but Jeanty's astronomical, right? Probably Heisman. Sampson is the guy that's not getting talked about enough. I do think that, if he comes out and he performs well at the combine, he's a kid that can challenge for a top 3 back of the class. And I know the running back class is loaded, but he has looked fantastic this football season. And he's someone that dynasty managers need to know now. Next guy is DJ Giddens. I alluded to him a little bit But let's talk about this year. 1,200 yards on 254 attempts and 7 touchdowns. He's been one of Kansas State's best players out there. Run grade 85.0, yards after contact 817, yards per attempt 4. You see the missed tackles for us, the explosive runs. He's done a good enough job. Now, what is his draft capital? I think that he could get a day 2 pick. I think he can go round 3 if a team loves him. Now, the team that screams him, and it depends on what they do with their coaching staff, is the Las Vegas Raiders. That team is just screaming they're going to love Giddens in that third. They need a running back. They love this kind of profile. And if he goes there, and you're talking about the volume that he could get, and just the fun that he could have in that offense with a new quarterback, hopefully, with Brock Bowers being there, that would be a lot of fun. So DJ Giddens to me and Dylan Sampson are 2 guys going under the radar. I wanted to really highlight a couple under the radar prospects out there that you should be watching right now. Starting getting ready for those 2nd and 3rd round. Now, if they're going in the 2nd round of rookie drafts, that's why it's important to go grab some rookie picks right now in that range. And the last guy that I had a little higher, and I didn't really touch on him too much on the big board, but he's an older prospect, Xavier Estropo from Miami, wide receiver. He's a slot guy. I think he's 86% in the slot or whatever it is. Oh, no, 90% I put on the board. And he's looked good this year, though. Over 60 catches, 979 yards, 10 touchdowns. He should hit 1,000 yards for Miami as they head to the playoff. 83.4 receiving grade. Yak per reception has been good. Yards per route run is fine. 8 out of 11.3. Really sure hands. Only 2 drops on the year. And the thing with Xavier, if you like Ladd McConkey, you're going to love Xavier Westroper, right? Ladd and him have very similar profiles. I know Ladd's younger, and I think that he can separate a little bit better. But Xavier, big playability, gets in the slot, creates targets for himself, creates separation, which you like to see. Doesn't have a ton of 50-50 balls because it's just not there. I think he creates separation well. And so Xavier could get drafted and you'd be like, man, this kid is very, very good. Hey, he slid into the 2nd round of my rookie drafts and now he's just creating targets. And where does he go? I would love for a team that needs a slot receiver to grab Xavier. And I just wanted to highlight him because I think he's having a good season. And I don't think enough people are talking about him right now. Now, the last thing I want to do is just talk about what these picks are going for. Now, some of these are straight up and some of them aren't, right? If you have an early first for Kyler Murray, Bo Nix is going for a first. So what I try to do is find players that are getting value between an early to a late, right? Caleb Williams is out there going for a first. Now, the thing with quarterbacks is how sure are you of Shador and Cam Ward and some of these guys, right? Think of the Malik Willis years and those kind of the Kenny Pickett class, and you're trading a pick thinking those guys are going to get top 10 capital. I don't think it's that class. Shador and Cam are better than that. But if you're moving a first for a quarterback, it's because you really need one, and hey, they perform well enough, right? Brock Purdy's there. Baker Mayfield is still there. Anthony Richardson is still getting valued at round 1 first. And there are plenty of deals out there. We've talked about it in our Discord too, where you can kind of move off of Richardson, maybe if you want that first, or you can get him, right? I think he's a value there. And I think he's performing well. So based on what the market says right now, these quarterbacks are going for that single first. You're probably going to have to collect, other assets, pair them together, do those things. But that's generally speaking where they're at. Quarterbacks are hard to value in Superflex because it's really league dependent. It's not really just format dependent. It's league dependent. But these are generally speaking some of the quarterbacks going for that first. Now, at the running back position, they're all over across the board, right? Kyron Williams, if you can get a first for him and re-roll in this deep class, might not be a bad option, right? Especially with Kyron Williams. The efficiency metrics are gross, right? I like Kyron. I think that he's been fine. But at a certain point, the wheels are going to fall off. And if you want to re-roll and you're looking at it and you're a rebuilding / retooling team, getting a first for Kyron's not a bad deal. Ken Walker, I still think Ken Walker and Jonathan Taylor there, but they are getting valued as a first. So I like to also show you, if you want to go buy one of these running backs and you think you have a late first and you want to take a swing at it, these are the guys going there. Joe Mixon, Bucky Irving, Isaiah Pacheco is still getting value there. Now, he hasn't come back yet, but if he does, right, if we're looking at Isaiah kind of coming back for that run in the playoffs, maybe, depending on if your league has a deadline or not, that's a guy that you could take a shot at, right? Bucky's another one. Bucky's been going for first now. Now they're shooting up and the value's been there. So those are guys to kind of look at. Now, at the wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, JSN, Rasheed, Zay Flowers, Roma Dunze, Devonta Smith. I really, with JSN down, the land of the wide receiver 2s, right? We still consider Garrett Wilson a 1. I do, at least based on my Dynasty rankings. But Smith and Rasheed and Zay and Rome and Devonta, like those guys are the land of wide receiver 2s. That's really what they're at. So you have to look at it, look at this class and say, if I can't get Tet, do I think Luther Burden, Emeka, Travis Hunter, those guys are going to be better than these guys that are on that screen, right, in that first round? And if you don't, then you could get these guys for a first. But if you want to re-roll and you think that they are, if Luther is one of those guys that you feel like is like those guys in this screen, you take the shot, right? Basically the 3 guys that I would not do that for on this screen, JSN, Rasheed, and Zay are guys I'm keeping. Rome and Devonta, I don't mind re-rolling. I'll be honest. The Eagles offense is spread out. Devonta just has a limited, he has a limited ceiling. Like his floor is pretty good, but his limited ceiling is there. I do think in the recent mock we did for our quarters podcast, we had the Eagles taking Tyler Warren, which would hurt Devonta Smith too. So if they do add to that offense, I think that struggles. And in Rome, I like Rome. I think that he's fine. But if I could get a first for Rome at this point and try to re-roll that position, I wouldn't mind doing that. And then at the tight ends, it's pretty gross because it's just the top guys, right? Trey, Laporta, Kyle, Hawk, Kittle, and Kincaid. That's generally speaking where first get valued, especially in tight end premium. As far as like if I can get a first for somebody, Kittle's been balling. I mean, he's been top 5 guy the last 5-6 weeks. When he's not injured, that's the question mark. So if you wanted to re-roll, and especially with Warren and Loveland and Fannin and maybe some of these other tight ends out there, that's not a bad play. I think Kittle and Kincaid are guys that if I can get first for, I would do it. The other 4, though, I'm holding. Maybe Laporta, if you want to get Laporta, I wouldn't trade straight up for a first, but if you want to get creative and add assets, I think that's the way to kind of do it. I did see someone in our Discord talked about they'd move Laporta for a first plus an asset like a JSN or something like that. And then they had to give back a third. Like if you want to be creative that way in tight end premium, I think you could do it. But as far as the first group being valued right now, that's generally where their line is at. So that's the big board. That's kind of what we're looking at in terms of the value that we see here. And here's the thing. When I'm talking about big board, these are going to change, right? I love doing it. Been doing it 3 years. I have a system for it. I don't just rank on vibes, even though some people out there think I do. But this is generally speaking what the class as of now. Now, as we hear guys leave and, come back to school or declare or whatever it is, things are going to change a lot. But this is generally speaking just for fun. Show you what those values are, but more importantly, where the tiers are. Because I do think that there's some tiers right now. And really 101 and 102 is great. And then after that, up until, the end of the first, I don't mind getting in that territory depending on what assets I have to give up. Now, the fun thing that we're going to be doing here on the channel, the next TDR Devy podcast, me and Jay Stein put on, we're going to be doing a rookie mock draft with landing spots. So we did I ran a simulator a bunch of times. We took a bunch of picks that got made, and we're going to base on now that we have the talent, we know where the talent is on the big board. Let's pair that with teams and see how comfortable we're taking, right? So, for example, when you're thinking of, hey, Judkins goes to the Patriots in that one, where would you take him? Where would you feel comfortable there? So be on the lookout for that here in the channel. As always, please check out our Substack. Check out the article below. We're running a special right now. As this gets run till Monday, you get a free trial for our Substack for the premium. Go check that out. And on our Patreon, we're also running till December 4th, I believe, basically a Black Friday sale. So we can't be here without you guys. I appreciate you guys, all the love and support. We'll check you guys on the next episode.